Welcome to the deep dive. For most of us, there's a pretty fundamental understanding about what it means to be born in the United States. It's almost automatic, isn't it? That immediate idea, born on US soil, you're a citizen. It feels like, well, the bedrock of how things work here. But what if that bedrock isn't quite as solid as we've always thought? What if the definition itself, who counts as an American citizen right from birth, is actually facing a really big change? That's exactly what we're digging into today. We're exploring these recent, pretty significant proposed shifts and the ongoing legal fights around U.S. birthright citizenship, particularly for newborns. And looking through the material, it's clear this isn't just some abstract legal thing. It really hits home for actual families, affects the status of their kids.
Absolutely. Our goal here is really to break down the complexities of this Executive Order 14160 and what it actually means. We want to help you navigate the facts in what's become a really important and honestly fast-moving legal and policy area. We'll look at exactly what changes are being proposed, why the whole thing is currently on hold, and crucially, what this all means for families across the country right now.
Yeah, this is a critical topic. It affects so many people, from folks who've lived here for years to those just starting out. We've gone through the details, and we're hoping to bring some clarity to what can feel pretty murky. Okay, let's unpack this. So let's start with the baseline. What's the rule we all sort of know? For any child born here in the U.S., historically, a U.S. birth certificate was basically all you needed, right? Proof of citizenship. That one document was enough to get things like a passport, social security number, and importantly, unless your parents were like foreign diplomats, their immigration papers usually didn't come into it. That's been the standard.
Exactly. That's the long-standing practice. And that's precisely the foundation that this Executive Order 14160 is trying to, change. The order itself is called Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. It was signed by President Trump back on January 20, 2025. It was supposed to kick in on February 19th, 2025. It's a very direct attempt to redefine that core understanding of birthright citizenship. So the main change, the really big one, is this. Under the proposed policy, babies born after that February 19th date wouldn't automatically get citizenship just because they were born here. That automatic grant would only happen if at least one parent is already a U.S. citizen, or what's called a lawful permanent resident, basically a green card holder. So think about the practical side. If this order actually went into effect, federal agencies like the State Department for passports or the Social Security Administration, they'd have to start asking for proof of the parent's own citizenship or their legal immigration status. The birth certificate alone just wouldn't cut it anymore for proving citizenship or getting those benefits.
Wow. That is a massive departure from how things have always worked. And here's where it gets really interesting. Because it was signed, but like you said, it hasn't actually happened. It's not being implemented. So the big question is, why not? What's stopping it?
Right. Well, the reason it's on hold is because of some major legal challenges. Almost immediately, lawsuits were filed. The core argument against it is constitutional. Primarily, opponents argue it violates the 14th Amendment's citizenship clause. That's the part of the Constitution, that's seen as the foundation for birthright citizenship. It says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens.
The citizenship clause. Okay, so courts have weighed in.
They have. Several federal judges have issued what are called preliminary injunctions. Basically, court orders blocking the policy while the legal cases proceed. For instance, there was U.S. District Judge John Coffiner out in Washington State. He issued a nationwide injunction back on February 6, 2025. That was in a case called Washington v. Trump. And importantly, that decision was later upheld by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which kind of solidified its broad reach, at least for a time. Then, more recently, you had U.S. District Judge Joseph LaPlante in New Hampshire. He took things a step further. On July 10, 2025, he granted class action status.
Class action. What does that mean in this context?
It means his ruling specifically covers all affected newborns across the country, not just the specific people who filed the initial lawsuit. That's a really key development for providing broader protection.
Okay, so multiple injunctions, including a class action one covering newborns nationwide. But then, didn't the Supreme Court recently weigh in on these kinds of nationwide injunctions? I remember something about a ruling in June, Trump v. Hesa, that limited how broad these injunctions could be. How does that fit in?
Yes, that's a crucial point, and it definitely makes things more complex. You're right. The Supreme Court's ruling in Trump v. Hesa on June 27th did place limits on the general use of nationwide injunctions by district courts. However, the nuance here is Judge LaPlante's class action certification. While Trump v. HESA might allow the government to enforce policies in states not directly involved in a lawsuit unless there is a class action covering everyone affected, well, Judge LaPlante did certify a class action for newborns.
So the class action provides a sort of workaround to the Supreme Court's limitation, at least for newborns.
It seems to, for now. But it creates this really confusing situation. As of late July, you might have certain states where theoretically enforcement could begin for some aspects, or for individuals not covered by the class because those states haven't sued directly. Meanwhile, other places, and specifically newborns nationwide due to LaPlante's ruling, remain protected by these ongoing lawsuits. It leads to this potential patchwork system.
A patchwork, yeah. That sounds incredibly confusing for people on the ground.
It really is. You could have different legal realities depending on where you live, which specific court order applies. It challenges the whole idea of uniform federal policy. Families are kind of caught in this legal uncertainty.
Okay, that's a lot on the legal side. Let's shift focus a bit. Let's talk about the human impact. What does this proposed change actually mean for families, especially, say, immigrant families living here?
Right, this is where it becomes very real. Under the proposed rules, if they were enforced, children born to parents who are here legally but on temporary visas wouldn't get citizenship at birth.
Right.
We're talking about common visas like the H-1B for skilled workers, the H-4 for their spouses and kids, F-1 for students, even B-1 for business visitors, or of course parents with undocumented status. For all these families, their U.S.-born child would not be a citizen automatically unless one parent was already a citizen or had a green card.
Can you give us a concrete example?
Sure. A very common scenario involves, say, professionals from India. You might have a parent on an H-1B visa, maybe their spouse is on an H-4 visa. This is incredibly common in the tech sector, for example. If they have a child born in the U.S. after the proposed effective date, under this executive order, that child wouldn't be a U.S. citizen at birth. Instead, the parents would likely need to apply for some other status for the child, like maybe H-4 dependent status through USCIS, the immigration agency. It's a whole different process, and the child's status is tied directly to the parent's temporary visa.
That sounds like it could create a huge problem.
It really could. We're potentially talking about hundreds of thousands of children born in the U.S. each year who might end up in this kind of legal limbo.
Right.
Or worse, potentially statelessness, if their parent's country also doesn't grant citizenship based on parentage alone, or if there are bureaucratic hurdles. It really forces us to ask a fundamental question about what citizenship means, doesn't it? And what belonging means for a child born right here.
Yeah, historically, birthright citizenship felt like this anchor, regardless of where your parents came from.
Exactly. It was about the place of birth. This proposal shifts the focus much more onto the parent's immigration status, potentially creating a different class of U.S.-born individuals without the same rights from day one.
That's a really profound potential shift. Okay, so let's bring this all together for our listeners. What do families absolutely need to know right now? Today is July 29, 2025. What's the practical takeaway?
Okay, let's break it down into key points for right now. First, and this is the most important thing, nothing has actually been enforced yet. Because of those court orders, birthright citizenship is still the law of the land for everyone born in the U.S. today. The proposed policy is blocked.
Okay, so rule number one, still blocked. What else?
Second, children born on or before February 19th, 2025 are generally considered unaffected by this proposed rule. Their citizenship, based on the traditional understanding, should be secure, barring any really unexpected court decisions down the line.
Got it. Born before the cutoff date, generally safe. What about documentation if things did change?
Right. Third point, if the rules were ever implemented, the paperwork would change dramatically. Parents would need to show proof, original documents of their own U.S. citizenship or lawful immigration status. Agencies like the State Department for passports and the Social Security Administration for SSNs, they would require this parental proof before issuing documents to the U.S.-born child. The birth certificate alone wouldn't be enough.
Okay, parental proof would become key. What about those lawsuits?
That's point 4. Class action lawsuits are really important here. Like Judge LaPlante's ruling, some courts are granting protections that cover entire groups of people potentially affected, not just the specific individuals named in the suit. This is vital for families who haven't filed their own lawsuits but fall into that category right now. That includes all newborns.
So those class actions offer broader protection. And the last point.
The final point is just that the legal situation is still very much in flux. The risk hasn't gone away. There are other lawsuits moving forward in different states. And, the Supreme Court could eventually issue a final ruling on whether the executive order itself is actually constitutional. So it's a situation that definitely needs ongoing attention. It's not settled yet.
Okay, that's a great summary. So the bottom line, based on everything we've looked at today, seems to be, for now, U.S. birthright citizenship holds. It's guaranteed as of today. However, there's this big if. If this executive order somehow gets through the court challenges, or if the legal landscape shifts because of how these class action suits resolve, then parents, especially those on temporary visas or without permanent status, could face a whole new reality. They might need extensive proof of their own status just to get essential things like passports and social security numbers for their babies born right here in the US. And that, as you said, could fundamentally change what citizenship means for future generations born here, potentially creating different tiers among US-born children. So just to quickly recap our discussion today, we've covered the current state of birthright citizenship, this proposed Executive Order 14160 trying to change it, the complex legal battles keeping it on hold, and the very real potential impact on families, especially those here on temporary visas. The key takeaway is that while the policy isn't active today, the situation is far from over and definitely warrants keeping a close eye on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into such a crucial and evolving topic. All the best, and we will meet again with another important matter again.